Thank you. It's a pleasure to serve under you today, and can I thank my honourable friend, the member for Gower, for leading on this debate, and of course everyone who took the time to sign the petition. The government's approach to procurement during the pandemic has been marred by rampant cronyism as well as huge wasting of taxpayers' money. They have shown a consistent track record of handing out contracts to their mates and even breaking the law along the way. Whilst it was apparent that the government had to procure large volumes of goods and services quickly to meet demand, this is no excuse for the serious levels of cronyism and corruption that are now becoming apparent. The National Audit Office investigation into government procurement showed that the government awarded £18 billion of contracts using emergency procurement regulations to buy goods, services and works to support its response to the pandemic. £10.5 billion was awarded directly without any competition. £6.7 billion was awarded directly to pre-approved suppliers, although they were not necessarily pre-approved for the products that they were selling. And only £0.2 billion was awarded using a competitive process. This approach to procurement naturally led to issues of quality, such as the 50 million face masks bought in April last year, which could not be used in the NHS because they did not meet its specifications. Over £2 billion worth of these contracts were awarded to firms with links to the Tories, with Cabinet members personally intervening to help their associates win lucrative contracts. Just under 2 weeks ago, the High Court ruled that the Cabinet Secretary broke the law by acting with apparent bias after a £560,000 contract was awarded to Public First without the tender going out for competition. Public First were found by the High Court to be a company with close links to the Cabinet Secretary and the former Number 10A Dominic Cummings. In February this year, the Government Legal Department stated that the cost for defending this case reached £600,000. This was more than the original contract was worth in the first place. It was shocking that this government used taxpayers' money to cover up their own law-breaking, whilst frontline workers were not adequately protected with the high-quality PPE they needed, or when our NHS staff could not be afforded a decent pay rise. And whilst the government are only managing to invest 20 pence per child per day in their so-called catch-up plan. I hope the Minister here today can tell us the total amount of taxpayers' money that has been spent by this government in covering up the fact that they acted unlawfully in awarding this contract to Public First. And could the Minister tell us what the government are doing to recover the taxpayers' money that was handed out to Public First? The National Audit Office investigation into government procurement also found specific examples of insufficient documentation being produced on key decisions, or on how risks such as perceived or actual conflicts of interest were identified or managed. In addition, several contracts were awarded retrospectively or have not been published in a timely manner. The lack of adequate documentation meant that the National Audit Office was not able to give assurance that the government adequately mitigated the increased risks arising from emergency procurement or applied appropriate commercial practices in all cases. There is no doubt that this has diminished public transparency and public confidence severely. And we can see the public feeling from the numbers that have signed this e-petition. Does the Minister agree with me that the use of emergency procurement powers needs to be wound down and all contracts awarded using such powers must be published with an assumption against redactions and in favour of uploading all contract documents? Let us be clear. None of this has happened in isolation. It is a case of the wealthy elite being given priority to become wealthier out of a pandemic. This is wrong on so many levels. We know that an independent public inquiry will be held in spring 2022, with the exact scope of the review yet to be determined. But does the Minister agree with me that the government's approach to public procurement during the covid-19 pandemic must be explicitly examined as part of the public inquiry into the handling of the crisis? As the 127,000 strong petition states, there must be a public inquiry to ascertain whether contracts had been procured fairly and represent value for money for taxpayers. The public have a right to know if their money was spent wisely and properly, along with wider scrutiny of the government's pandemic response. Thank you.
Thank you.